So I was lucky that I met Deirdre a semester or two before. I was introduced by, I think, Jason Travers because I mentioned that I was really interested in applying for a master's in medical illustration after my post-baccalaureate classes right now. So he was like, you gotta meet Deirdre. Like, we went to masters in UPenn together. She's like super into science. And I met her and she's great, and we took classes. I was her TA. Then we did like an advanced studio and where I worked on my portfolio for this master's degree, and she was like, hey, I've been talking to Professor Swann and you have to get in on this if this happens. Like, if we get this funding, it's a great opportunity. It's basically your first like medical illustration job. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. And then we got the funding, so now we're doing this. I actually was on path to do academia. Like, I did 2 honors theses in my undergrad at Cornell. I worked as a lab specialist at Princeton University after graduating. But when I was there, I was like, I really miss out on taking my art classes. I miss out on my field like little sketches. And I was realizing that if I could find a dream job, I would be able to combine both my passion for the biological sciences and art, because my favorite part of everything was just drawing the things that I was researching. And then I did a little research and I looked up that there's a field of like scientific illustration and medical illustration. I was like, this is perfect. Like, why haven't I thought of this before? So now I am like very passionately trying to pursue it and like hoping that a master's program takes me. I think one of the challenges is the communication with the science and the art. So it's basically making sure that when I illustrate something, it's not just based on what I know, but what is correct. Like, I'm not a neuroscience major, more of environmental science. So there were some aspects where I like slightly misplaced something on the brain, and then Professor Swann has to be like, it's such a beautiful illustration, but wrong. Like, we can't use this, right? So you have to be able to like adapt and adjust and know that it's not just like something that looks good and you're like, that looks like a brain to me, but something that's accurate that a scientist can be like, that is an education tool. Not only is it beautiful, but I can learn, I can teach my students off this. I don't have to show this to my students and be like, this is beautiful, but wrong. Like, so I was like, that was the harder part, was making sure everything was really accurate. I think in the process, there were some prompts where it was very, what I expected. Like, this is the process. You illustrate, like, arrows go to this part of this brain to the other, right? It's very like, I've seen this in diagrams. And then some other aspects that I didn't realize that was necessary for illustrations was the like abstract behavior that comes out of some of these neurological functions, and then how little like research that we have on it that's very like solid. So we try to do an illustration showing seasonal affective disorder, and I started an illustration, spent a couple hours on it, showed it to the professor, and she was like, actually, I did more research. We don't know enough. Like, we're gonna have to scrap that all. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So that just happens once in a while where everything is still a learning process. Nothing is set in stone. So you have to kind of adapt really quickly to almost like every day seems like, oh, now it's completely different and we have to change everything. I actually discovered like a love for different types of materials and techniques. So I'm thinking about if I do a capstone, I might be moving towards, so I'm doing this like little artsy little project that I haven't finished yet. Ooh. But it's basically these brain slices. So if you go from front to back, you slice them. And I took this kind of thin plastic and I put like alcohol ink, made this really very like tie-dye design, cut out actual like sections of the brains, and I'm gonna make like a 3D sculpture or like kind of module so that it's more like interactive, more like 3-dimensional, something I haven't done. So I feel like actually the science part has inspired more artistic projects than I would have ever thought would have happened from this. And I also learned that I love digital art because the ease of going back and clicking undo or deleting something, it can't be underestimated when you're working with something that changes almost daily, like the prompt. So I was like, thank God I didn't do like an oil painting and then be told that I did one section wrong, because that would drive me nuts. So I think it's a new appreciation for different types of material.